The Dope is a book published in 2021 in which Benjamin Smith narrates the true story of drug trafficking in Mexico. Already from the beginning, with the story of Cruz, it is clear that the problem is not simple, nor something that simply pits evil traffickers with heroic police officers, but rather a structural and endogenous problem of the Mexican political, economical, and social system. Likewise, the author crudely portrays the ineffectiveness of the war on drugs and the reality that as long as the demand does not decrease and legal alternatives do not offer the opportunities that drug trafficking offers to Mexican peasants, drugs will find, one way or another, their path. The author guides us through the history of drug trafficking in Mexico to show its current complexity. From José del Moral and the roots with the Chinese to the nationalization of the business, the narco as a social benefactor with Fernández Puertas, the consolidation of the Golden Triangle in the 50s, the decentralization and the rise of the Mexican brown in the 70s, the business sophistication with Fonseca, Caro Quintero or Félix Gallardo, the violence of Operación Cóndor, and the emergence of paramilitary groups in the 90s, among other processes that reveal a deeply rooted and masterfully complex phenomenon. On the other hand, the book offers a great framework to understand the state of Mexico today, and its status as an hybrid regime, illiberal democracy, or ultimately as a state captured by structural corruption and violence that threaten the rule of law and the human rights. From the times of Cantu through Loaiza, the Cadillac Bust, to El Negro Durazo and beyond, it is explained how the Mexican state has not simply been the victim of drug trafficking, but in some way complicit and beneficiary of it. In this way, at first, some pre-politicians were bribed by drug trafficking in exchange of protection and impunity. This relationship escalated until it became in a complex interrelationship between high bureaucracy and drug trafficking. The author narrates how even in the wars, the state did not seek to eliminate drug trafficking but to control it and use it to maintain the functioning of the state itself, to integrate it into its own structure. However, with the fall of the Medellin cartel, Mexican drug trafficking became too powerful, and since the 20s it has gone from bribing the state to subjugating it. This is why Mexico has gone from being a narco state to a captured or narco-dependent state. This state capture is perhaps the most anti-democratic trait of Mexico, since in some regions it is the cartel and not the state who exercise the monopoly of violence, who collects the protection rackets, and who controls the plazas. The book shows how under Calderón, Peña Nieto, and López Obrador, the combination of corruption, cartels, paramilitaries, and prohibitionist policies has unleashed a spiral of violence that threatens the rule of law and the country's governability. The book also explores the social dimension of drug trafficking, showing how it is rooted in pre-existing social and family networks with a peasant social base and a white-collar and bureaucratic elite. It also suggests that the war on drugs was from the beginning a cultural and racial conflict, a struggle between the modernization project of the Porfiriato and the popular culture. This narrative of the internal enemy has persisted, maintaining the poorest and weakest links bare to burn of the violence. In addition, Smith is aware that the history of Mexico cannot be understood without reference to the United States. Specifically, he emphasized that the corruption also occurs in the United States and the DEA, and in the prohibitionist policy imposed uninterruptedly since the times of Astinger by the United States. In this sense, the author is very critical of the effectiveness of this policy and demonstrates its devastating consequences, and that the real problem is structural and needs a structural solution as well. For this reason, as shown in the chapter of Salazar Vinegra, the author is ambiguous in his position regarding to anti-prohibitionist debate. Finally, I want to highlight that the logic of the book is epitomized in the chapter of the murder of Kiki Camarena, where the blurred line between the state and the crime, the legal and the corrupt, and the good and the evil that characterize the Mexican political regime is reflected.